Welcome everyone to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore the topics of interest to caregivers. And we do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, neighbors, really anyone who's caring for someone else. My name is Katie, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. And before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the lands that we're on today. And while we meet on a virtual platform, we have folks joining us from across the province. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands we each call home. I'm joining you today from the city of St. Catharines, which is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. And acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous peoples. And if you'd like to learn more about the lands that you're joining from, you can find out more at native-land.ca. The Disability Tax Credit, or DTC, is a non-refundable federal tax credit that can reduce the amount of taxes owed by a person with a disability or someone who supports them. It's also a gateway benefit that gives access to other programs like the Canada Disability and the Savings Plan. And in our session today, we are going to explore what the DTC is and whether you or the person you care for may qualify. We're going to go through some eligibility criteria and tips for applying, what to expect after you submit your application, and cover some other programs and benefits that are connected to the DTC. So we will have time at the end for a Q&A. So please put your questions in the chat box as we go through. And as a reminder, we're not able to respond to your specific or personal finance questions, but we'll do our best to get to as many of those questions as possible that you submit. And we'll also point you in the direction of where you can get any of those individual or specific questions answered. So joining us today to speak to the DTC is Solana and Ebony. Solana is a program coordinator with the Plan Institute, focusing on outreach, community engagement, and sharing educational resources on disability benefits. She holds a bachelor's in professional communication, an associate's degree in arts and sciences, and a certification in mental health and addiction support work. Solana believes deeply in building community and uplifting the voices of those who need to be heard. Ebony holds a bachelor's degree in health sciences and a master's degree in public health and brings hands-on experience supporting survivors of sexualized violence and advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the workplace. She's passionate about building engaged and empowered communities through trust-based collaboration. So Solana is going to be presenting the information today, and Ebony will pop up in the chat box throughout the session to respond to any questions that you folks may have. So I'm going to pass it over now to Solana to get things started.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Katie. That was lovely. Again, my name is Solana Van Ness, and I'm a program coordinator here with Plan Institute. I am so happy to be here with you folks today. I am also joined by Ebony Rosa, our program manager, in the chat. So a couple quick housekeeping things from me, and then we will jump right into the good stuff. Just a little bit about Plan Institute. Plan Institute is a national nonprofit and social enterprise based in Burnaby, BC. Plan Institute helps support people with disabilities and their families. We provide educational material and resources, we collaborate on community-based projects, and we engage in a wide array of partnerships to host initiatives for change and policy reform. Plan Institute's mission is to empower people with disabilities to lead a good life. In essence, Plan Institute is focused on curating knowledge designed to improve the lives of those living with disabilities and their families. We focus on advocacy, benefits navigation, and support, as well as benefits education, which is a little bit of what we're going to do today. So a quick webinar agenda. We are going to talk about the disability tax credit. So what the DTC is, who's eligible for it, how to apply, and some application tips. We're also going to talk a little bit about the brand new Canada Disability Benefit. And then we are going to move into the Registered Disability Savings Plan. We're going to talk about how to access this long-term savings plan and access up to $90,000 in grants and bonds. And then we are going to move to our question and answer session. That is where you can ask me and Ebony any questions that you might have. We love your questions. We welcome them. So please, throughout today's presentation, think of a question you may want to ask. We're happy to answer at the end. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the lands that I am calling in from today. I am located in Vancouver, BC. So Plan Institute operates on the traditional, ancestral, and often unceded territories of the Kikite, Chemainus, Coastal Salish, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Musqueam, Stalo, Hul'qumi'num Treaty Group, Cayuse, Umatilla, and Walla Walla nations. Our work, however, extends across so-called Canada and occupies the lands of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. As a settler organization, we extend our deference and gratitude to these people who have stewarded these lands since time immemorial. We know that in a world where Indigenous people thrive, disabled people also flourish. Decolonization and reconciliation are integral to our work, helping disabled people to live their good lives, and we remain committed to ongoing repair of colonial harm as an organization. All right, so just a quick disclaimer before we jump in. The material in this presentation is intended as a general source of information only. It should not be taken as offering specific medical, tax, legal, or financial advice. Every effort has been made to ensure that the material is correct at the time of creation, but we cannot promise that this will always remain the most up-to-date information. You should consult your personal doctor, medical professional, tax advisor, accountant, or legal professional before taking any action based upon the information contained in today's presentation. So we did talk a little bit about Plan Institute, but just a reminder that Plan Institute is a national nonprofit. So just because we're located in Burnaby, BC, doesn't mean we only help people in BC. We help people all over Canada, and we are here to empower people with disabilities to lead a good life. All right, so a little bit about our services. Plain Institute offers disability benefits navigation. So we support individuals and families navigating all of the aspects of disability through the helpline that we have. Our helpline is completely free. You can call or email in anytime you like, and through that helpline, we can connect you with one-to-one support. We offer those education and learning initiatives like we're doing today. And then we also offer some leadership and advocacy. So together with our community partners, we like to advocate for policy reform and change. All right, and now we are into our first topic. Let's get started with the disability tax credit. The DTC was designed as a non-refundable tax credit intended to help cover the extra medical costs people with severe or prolonged mental or physical impairments may pay. The DTC is not just about immediate financial relief, but also about acknowledging the ongoing challenges faced by individuals with disabilities. It's a step towards easing the financial burden and providing some peace of mind. So first of all, for the 2025 tax year, the DTC is valued at $10,138, which is directly applied to your tax returns. This can significantly reduce the amount of tax payable for eligible individuals. For families with children who have disabilities, there's an additional credit amount of $5,914. This is a crucial support that helps to ease financial burdens on families. Another key point of the disability tax credit is that it is a retroactive benefit. The DTC can be approved for the year your disability began, allowing for a reassessment of your income tax return going all the way back as far as 10 years. So the current year is 2026, that means we can go back to 2016. This could potentially lead to a tax refund, which may provide some financial relief. So while the tax credit itself is a non-refundable tax credit, having your taxes reassessed for the years that you had a disability and weren't receiving the disability tax credit can result in receiving a refund, which is really, really helpful for a lot of folks. Unused credit amounts can be given to eligible family caregivers to help reduce their taxes. An eligible family member is someone you are related to by birth, marriage, or adoption, provides you with regular food, shelter, and or clothing. So say you're a person with a disability and you currently don't work, you might be thinking, well, I don't pay income tax. What's the point of the disability tax credit? And if you live with someone, let's say in this instance, maybe it's your mom and she provides you with food, shelter, and or clothing, you are able to transfer that $10,138 to your mom if she's working, and she can use that as her non-refundable tax credit. So that's a pretty cool benefit of the DTC as well. So the DTC is what we kind of like to call the gateway benefit. Once you have the DTC and you're approved, lots of other benefits open up. We won't have time to address every single one in today's webinar, but we will address a few of the big ones. So just at a quick glance, you can have your DTC and then be eligible for the Canada Workers Benefit Disability Supplement, Home Buyers Amount, and Home Accessibility Tax Credit. You could be eligible for a qualified disability trust option, medical expenses and disability support deduction, registered disability savings plan, which we will be talking about today, the Canada Disability Benefit, which is brand new, and we will be talking about that today as well, the Child Disability Benefit, and the Caregiver Credit. So who can apply for the DTC? The DTC has no age restrictions, and it does not have to do with whether someone can work or go to school, and it does not depend on their income or assets. So something really interesting about the DTC is that you don't need a formal diagnosis to apply for the DTC. A lot of questions come in about, I have these symptoms or I experience this, it really affects my daily living, but I've never been given a formal diagnosis. Am I still eligible? And the answer to that is yes, yes, you are. So we don't need a formal diagnosis to apply for the DTC. We just need to be able to show how our impairments or how our disabilities affect areas of our daily living. So to apply for the DTC, you need a couple of things. You need a social insurance number, whether it's temporary or permanent. You do need a severe impairment, so whether that's mental, physical, or a combination of both. You need a prolonged impairment, so your impairment has to have lasted or is expected to last at least 1 year. And you need to be a Canadian resident for tax filing purposes. So that is typically someone who's lived in Canada for at least 6 months of the most recent year. So a couple slides ago, we were talking about sort of those areas of daily living, so those activities of daily living that your impairment affects. These are the categories. We have vision, speaking, feeding, which encompasses both eating and making food, hearing, eliminating, which refers to bladder and bowel functions, dressing, mental functions necessary for everyday life, and walking. These areas reflect the essential functions that can impact daily living. So a severe impairment means that the applicant either has a marked restriction, so they are very restricted in one basic area of daily living. So one of those 8 areas that we just looked at. This means they either can't do the activity, they need a lot of help to do that activity, or they take a lot longer to do that activity than most people. Another option is the cumulative or combined effect of a significant restriction. This means that you may be restricted a little less, but in 2 or more categories of those 8 areas of daily living that we looked at. The cumulative effect is equal to a marked restriction. So one marked restriction or a cumulative, so slightly less restriction in 2 or more areas. A third option is life-sustaining therapy. So this means that a person is in need of therapy that keeps them alive and also takes up a lot of time. Depending on the therapy, it must occur at least twice a week with a total average of 14 hours. So, for example, this may be something like dialysis. So how do we apply for the DTC form? Step number 1 is fill out the first section, part A of the form. This is the part of the form that is for you to fill out. You can do this with or without help. The supporting family member section, so if you're going to transfer that $10,138, is located right at the bottom of that part A. So step 2, take that completed application to your medical professional and they will do part B. Only the relevant activities need to be filled out. So if you have a very marked restriction in walking, you don't need to fill out the hearing or the feeding category. And step 3, send in the completed form to the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA, by mail or online. If submitting online, do this through your My CRA account under the Benefits and Credits section. If submitting through mail, send it to the nearest tax center. Addresses for the nearest tax center are on the last page of the DTC application. So if you're going to apply online, it's very similar. First, you fill out that Part A on your My CRA account. You can also call the CRA. Some people don't know this, but you can call them and do that Part A over the phone. This is a great accessibility tool for folks. That number is 1-800-959-9281, and I'm happy to give that number to you at the end if you need it as well. We also really recommend taking note of your reference number and making sure that you have that because your medical practitioner will need that reference number to do Part B. And then you can confirm your application has been successfully submitted. If you're submitting online, you will be able to see updates regarding your DTC application under the Progress Tracker section of your CRA account. So a lot of people like to apply online because you can watch the progress of your DTC, and those updates tend to be really comforting. So this is what it looks like. This is the Form T2201. You can see here is a picture of Part A. So that is the part that is your section to fill out. And this is probably my favorite part of the presentation where I get to remind folks if there's one thing to really take away from today's presentation, it's to remember to keep a copy of the application. Whether you take a photo of it and you put it in a special photo album on your phone, or you put it in a binder, or you tape it to your fridge. I even had a fellow once who taped it to his front door because that's where he would know where it is, just the inside of his front door. Um, Wherever works for you to keep that in a place within your home, we really recommend doing that. And this is because the DTC may expire, so you may be approved for 5 years, 10 years, or a lifetime. So if you're one of those folks who's approved for the 5 years or the 10 years, when you go to reapply, it's really, really helpful to have that application, take it down from your fridge, pull up that picture you took on your phone, and you'll know exactly how you filled it out the first time. And that is just gold to have that. It makes reapplying when your DTC expires so, so, so much easier. So I really recommend um, that you keep that form wherever works for you so that you have a copy. So this is kind of what it looks like online. Remember, we talked about that super important application number. You can see in sort of that right side of your screen and an example of what that will look like. So make sure to write that down, keep that somewhere just for you, and make sure you have that when you're speaking to your doctor as well. So who can fill out the DTC? There are a lot of people actually who can fill out the DTC. I get this question a lot that, maybe I don't have a great relationship with my general practitioner, or I actually don't have a general practitioner at the moment. So what do I do? And there's lots of options actually. So there are medical doctors. So someone like your general practitioner, they can fill out all sections of the DTC. There's a nurse practitioner, and they can fill out all sections of the DTC as well. Now, if you have a marked restriction in the vision category, your optometrist can fill out that section. If you have a marked restriction in the hearing category, your audiologist can fill out that section. Same for walking, you could have a physiotherapist fill that out. A speech language pathologist could fill out the speaking section. And a psychologist could fill out the mental functions necessary for everyday life section. And an occupational therapist can address the walking, feeding, dressing, and cumulative effects section. One thing that I do want to note for the mental categories function is that it cannot be a counselor. I get this question a lot. Unfortunately, at this current moment, counselors are not able to sign off on the DTC, but we do have some strategies to help with that. One of the things I recommend is actually having your counselor send some notes to your doctor so that your doctor can read the notes from your counselor, and then your doctor can go ahead and help you fill out that category and be a little bit more informed. So that's one way to maybe include your counselor and their expertise in your DTC application and still have it signed off by the correct medical professional. So a couple application tips. Include specific examples of how you are restricted in the activities of daily living we discussed. Think about how your disability restricts you on your worst day, even if you have some help. Some things to not include in your DTC application are your ability to work, your ability to housekeep or do chores around the house, your ability to manage a bank account, your ability to drive or do recreational activities. The CRA just isn't quite looking for that information, even though we know that disability does impact these areas. So what happens after you apply? The CRA tries to review the DTC applications within 8 weeks. When the CRA is expecting high volumes, it may take more like 4 to 6 months for the CRA to make a decision. This is really frustrating, but it just really depends on the volume of DTC applications that they have at the time. The CRA will tell you in a letter called the Notice of Determination whether you are approved or not. Processing times and the status of your application can be checked through that online MyCRA portal or through calling that phone number that I mentioned earlier. So possible outcomes after applying. The CRA might have some additional questions for the medical professional, so the additional questionnaire is sent to your medical professional. You may be approved. Fabulous. You could be approved for all future years, so permanent DTC, or a number of years, as we talked about earlier, so 5 years or 10 years. And then, unfortunately, you can be denied. We do have some options if you are denied. It can be discouraging. Do not feel like it's the end of the road. You can reapply, you can add information, or you have 90 days to submit a formal objection to the Chief of Appeals or tax court. So if you are interested in getting your DTC or you have more questions, of course, feel free to take note of the information on your screen and contact our helpline. We can also direct you towards that DABC's online DTC tool. I can talk a little bit more about that in the Q&A if you would like, but it is a fabulous online tool that really helps you understand that DTC application process. And if you're looking to take another webinar or you just want a little bit more general information, Plan Institute offers a lot of webinar options as well. And we also offer multiple language support. So if you have another language that you're more comfortable in, we're happy to support you in that language. So let's talk now a little bit about the Canada Disability Benefit, so the CDB. This is the benefit that was new. It launched in July of 2025, so it's been about a year. The Canada Disability Benefit is a new federal benefit designed with the intention of lifting people with disabilities out of poverty. The new benefit launched in July 2025 and provides working age people, so people 18 to 65, who have disabilities with up to $200 a month. The CDB is not considered taxable income. So who can apply for the CDB? To be able to apply for the CDB, you must be a resident of Canada for tax filing purposes. You must be between the ages of 18 and 65. You must be approved currently for the DTC. So remember when I said the disability tax credit is sort of a gateway, and then from there, there's lots of other benefits. This is one of them. And you must have filed your income taxes for the most recent year. So example, to receive the benefit from July 2025 to June 2026, your taxes for the 2024 tax year must be filed. And lastly, you must meet the household income thresholds in order to qualify for some or part of the benefit amount. So how are these payments calculated? The CDB payment amounts are based on the adjusted net income of you and your spouse or partner, so your household income. If your income is under the income threshold, you will get the full $200 a month. You can still get some of the CDB as long as your income is not higher than the phase-out income threshold. If your income is higher than the threshold, you will get no benefit. Additional working income exemption, if you or your spouse or common law partner earn some or all of your money from employment, then up to $10,000 for a single person and $14,000 for a couple is also allowed. So here's just a little bit of a picture of those income thresholds. I will pause here if you want to take a quick look. I can also make sure in the slides package that you get the slide as well if you would like to take a look at this and see where you may fall in these thresholds. So how can you apply for the CDB? You could apply in person at a Service Canada location. You can also apply online. You could apply by phone again, so there's the phone numbers there up on your screen. And you could also apply by mail. If you would like some support with the CDB or you have some questions, feel free to again reach out to our one-to-one helpline. You can take one of our CDB webinars. We actually just launched our first one in May. So we have a brand new CDB webinar if you would really like to dive into how the CDB works. And then there's also the Canada Disability Benefit website and resources. So now we are moving into the Registered Disability Savings Plan, which is a long-term savings plan specifically for people with disabilities who are approved for the DTC. It's designed to help people build financial security over a lifetime. The Registered Disability Savings Plan is sort of similar to an RRSP or an RESP, so a Registered Retirement Savings Plan or a Registered Education Savings Plan, but it does have some key differences. It does not affect federal benefits and usually does not affect provincial benefits either. It can hold up to $200,000 in personal contributions, plus up to $90,000 in government grants and bonds, as well as unlimited investment income. So the money can grow in your RDSP over time. So eligibility for the Registered Disability Savings Plan. There are a few important terms to know as we talk about the RDSP. The beneficiary is the person with the disability who will eventually receive the funds from the RDSP. This person must be approved for the disability tax credit. That's part of the eligibility. And the holder is the person who might manage the RDSP. In many cases, the beneficiary can also be the holder. So you can be the holder of your own RDSP. It can also be managed by a family member. So part of the eligibility criteria, the beneficiary must be in the calendar year they turn 59 or younger to open and deposit money into the RDSP. They must be in the calendar year they turn 49 or younger to receive any government contributions. So that is at $90,000 in grants and bonds. They must be approved for the DTC, and they must be a Canadian resident for tax filing purposes with a valid SIN number. The holder, so the person who's holding the RDSP, remember that can be the beneficiary or it can be a family member. They must be the beneficiary's legal guardian or parent if the beneficiary is a minor. They must be the beneficiary's qualified family member or legal guardian if the beneficiary is an adult, and they must have a valid SIN number. So where do we open an RDSP? Most financial institutions now offer the RDSP. To find where and with whom someone would like to open their RDSP, they will need to do a little bit of research first. Some key things to consider when researching where to open your RDSPs are fees, lump sum payment options, investment options, and accessibility. So let's talk about the RDSP grants and bonds. The RDSP provides a lifetime maximum of $90,000, including $20,000 in bonds and $70,000 in grants. The amount depends on the adjusted net income from 2 years before the current year of eligibility. So for children, amounts are based on income information from the Canada Child Benefit. For adults, amounts are based on the beneficiary's income plus their spouse's or common law partner's income. Beneficiaries can claim retroactive payments for up to 10 years back as long as they are still under the age limit. So again, it has that retroactive ability to get those grants and bonds from when you've had your disability and may have not been approved for the DTC or had an RDSP open. So again, just important to note, the beneficiaries can receive grants and bonds until December 31st of the year they turn 49. So if you're in your 40s and you're thinking about getting that DTC and opening up an RDSP, it's a great time to prioritize it because you only have up until the year in which you turn 49 to receive those grants and bonds. So let's talk a little bit about the bonds. Bonds are for low-income individuals and can provide up to $1,000 per year to a lifetime maximum of $20,000. No personal contributions are required for bonds. To receive the full bond, family income must be below the annual threshold. For 2026, that annual threshold is $38,237. You'll receive a partial bond up to $58,523. So if your income is above that $58,523, you will not receive a bond. Grants. To receive the grant, the beneficiary or holder must make personal contributions to the RDSP. RDSP grants provide a lifetime maximum up to $70,000. So that's where the $90,000 comes from. You get $70,000 from the grants and you can get $20,000 from the bonds. To receive the full $3,500 grant for an adjusted family income at or below $117,045, you must deposit $1,500. So that's that matching rate. The first $500 is matched at 300%, and the second $1,000 is matched at 200%. For an adjusted family income above $117,045, or if no income taxes are filed, $1,000 a year is available in grants, and a $1,000 contribution is required. So you make a contribution and the government matches it. So let's talk a little bit about retroactive grants and bonds. A beneficiary can get grants and bonds from up to 10 years before they open their RDSP, depending on DTC eligibility. The maximum retroactive grants that can be received per year is $10,500, and this does require personal contributions. The maximum retroactive bonds that can be received in 1 year is $11,000. Eligibility ends as soon as the beneficiary is in the year they turn 50 with no exceptions. So remember, if you're in your 40s and you're thinking about the RDSP, it'd be a really great time to prioritize it because you have up until that age of 50. So there are some ways to maximize your RDSP. You can maintain a basic emergency fund so that you do not withdraw any RDSP money from your RDSP. You can set up automatic contributions. You can review and rebalance investments every 1 to 2 years. Consistency is key to maximizing long-term growth. That's why we recommend setting up those automatic contributions. The government will always send you an annual summary of contributions. This is usually received in February or March. And then another piece of advice we really like to give folks is to start early. You can start an RDSP for a child if they are born with a disability as soon as they're born. So really, it's never too young to start an RDSP. We're always happy to talk to families who would like to set up an RDSP for their child. Starting young is a great strategy. So let's talk a little bit about RDSP withdrawals. Mandatory withdrawals must start from the RDSP by December 31st of the year the beneficiary turns 60, because this registered disability savings plan is sort of meant to replace a regular retirement savings plan that someone without a disability may have. So remember, the intent of the registered disability savings plan is for that retirement age. Earlier withdrawals are possible, but they would be subject to something called the 10-year rule. So we really do advise against earlier withdrawals if you can, or making emergency withdrawals, because you can potentially lose those grants and bonds that the government has contributed to your RDSP. There are no restrictions on what the money can be spent on, as long as the funds are going to the beneficiary. So if you reach age 60 and you would like to, you're ready to withdraw your funds, you can use it to pay the rent for an apartment or to buy some new furniture, or however you would like to spend that money. So a formula is used to calculate the annual minimum and maximum withdrawal amounts. If you have more personal contributions than the government contributes, even by $1, you do have a lot more flexibility. There are accommodations made for withdrawals for people who have a shortened life expectancy. You do need a medical practitioner to certify in writing that the beneficiary has an expectancy or life expectancy of 5 years or less in order to be able to make those earlier withdrawals and not be subject to that 10-year rule. So let's talk a little bit about what happens if your DTC approval lapses. So remember when we were talking about the DTC, we talked about sometimes they're approved for 5 years or 10 years, and then the DTC expires. So maybe you have a DTC for 5 years and you open an RDSP, and then, oh no, your DTC has expired. So what happens to that RDSP? The RDSP will remain open. No one can make contributions to the plan while the DTC is expired. Unfortunately, while your DTC is expired, you cannot receive grants or bonds. You cannot catch up on grants or bonds. Registered retirement savings plans can only be rolled over in the plan within 4 years after the year in which the beneficiary loses the DTC approval. So if your DTC approval has lapsed, so you had it for 5 years and now you're on year 6 and your DTC approval has expired, it's really important to prioritize reapplying for that DTC. The best way I can explain it to understand it sort of easily is if your DTC expires, your RDSP sort of goes to sleep until your DTC is reapproved, and then your RDSP fires back up, and you can continue to make contributions and receive grants and bonds as normal. So let's talk a little bit about RDSP taxation. When money is in an RDSP, no tax is paid. Personal contributions are not taxable at any time. This is great news. So money inside your RDSP grows tax-free. Personal government contributions are not taxed. Government contributions and investment growth are taxable and any rollover amounts when withdrawn, but it's usually at a very, very low rate. So an RDSP is a great place to safely store money. Maybe you have a little bit of inheritance or you're getting a little bit of birthday money and you want to keep that money really safe and make it really work for you. It's great to put that into an RDSP. So if you have more questions or you would like to talk one-to-one with someone about the RDSP because it can get quite complicated sometimes or it can feel a little overwhelming, we are happy to set you up with a one-to-one session with a helpline advisor through our helpline. We do have RDSP tutorials, we have RDSP calculators and other RDSP resources at rdsp.com. I really recommend that RDSP calculator if you have questions about what your income may look like and what amount of a grant or a bond you may receive. Check out that RDSP calculator. It's really super helpful. We also offer, again, webinars in multiple languages. So if you have a different language you're comfortable in, please do feel free to let us know, and we can either support you in a different language through our helpline, or we can direct you to one of our translated webinars as well. And then we do make blog posts. Those are pretty interesting. I always recommend checking them out, and that is planinstitute.ca/blog. So this brings us to the end of our presentation. I know that was a lot of me throwing information at you. You've been a fabulous audience, so thank you so, so much for listening to me sort of put a lot of topics into a short amount of time. I'm really happy to take any questions that you have. I know Ebony has been answering away in the chat, so feel free to ask questions in there as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been very, very helpful. Our chat box has been very, very active. Big thank you to Ebony, who continues to respond to questions in the chat. But I do want to take some time to come and ask some of those questions to you directly,
Of
because
course.
those that are watching our webinar are not going to be able to see the chat box, and we want to be able to support them as well. So lots of really helpful information, folks, and we will be, as a reminder, we're sharing the recording, we're sharing the slides, And there are lots of helpful phone numbers, resources, websites, places to call to walk through your individual situation and get some advice from Plan Institute and other resources as well. I want to start with a question that we get often in these types of webinars. Um, what would you or how would you respond to somebody who says, you know, I don't really make any money. I don't have, a refund or like things I have to pay. So like, what's the point in applying for the DTC? Because it doesn't really help my taxes.
Totally. So we get this question a lot as well, and there's lots of great reasons to apply for that TTC. Like I said, the TTC is sort of the gateway to a lot of other benefits. So being DTC approved could qualify you for that Canada Disability benefit. That's $200 a month. You can also transfer it to that family member or person who is supplying you with the food, water, shelter, clothing. So if you have a spouse, you can transfer it to them, and it's a really great break tax-wise for them as well. So it is transferable. And actually, something that's really cool is maybe you work part-time and you're able to use a little bit of your credit, but not the full $10,138. You can actually split it. So you could use the amount that's appropriate for your taxes and transfer the remainder to someone who may be participating in your care, whether that's a spouse or a parent or a sibling you're living with who's directly providing you with food, shelter, water, and clothing. You can also open up that RDSP. That's a really fantastic tool to have. An RDSP is really important to have as well. Maybe unfortunately you're in a car accident and you get a settlement and you want a place to put that money that's not going to interrupt your provincial benefits. So for us, that's PWD, but for you guys, I believe that's ODSP. You can put that money into an RDSP and it will not interrupt those benefits. Of course, it's up to that $200,000. So if your settlement is larger than that, you may have to look at other options such as Henson Trust or QDT. But those are just a couple benefits off the top of my head of having that DTC. Oh, maybe one more I'll throw in is the accessibility, like home accessibility credit.
Right.
So that allows for you to make some renovations on your home and you can claim that, or your family member can claim that as well. So say you need an accessible shower, you're then eligible for that home accessibility credit that will help you be able to afford and then subsequently write off the accessibility shower that was put in. So there's lots and lots of benefits. I won't run through them all, but even if you're not having an income at the current moment, I really do recommend applying for your DTC still.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it's helpful for people to hear and remind them that while it may not impact this one credit may not impact you substantially, it opens the doors for so many other
That's right.
resources and supports that could potentially help you along the way. So thank you for covering that off. I think that's really helpful. We have lots of questions. I'm going to go through them, not all of them, because as I say, Ebony's been doing fabulous job, but I'm going to hit on some of the bigger ones. And one of the questions we got almost immediately was about some of the changes that are coming up and that
Yeah.
dementia is now going to be something that's accepted through these claims. And so a number of the folks that participate and watch our webinars are supporting somebody who is living with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And so I just want to clarify for our audience, that this change is coming forward. And if that's something with, is a simple diagnosis from a family physician enough to put forward for the DTC? Is there any other considerations that folks supporting people living with dementia or Alzheimer's that they need to think about?
Yeah, so I believe what we're addressing is that new spring economic update, where some new updates to the DTC were just announced a couple months ago. And that included sort of a long list of conditions that may sort of auto qualify you or speed up the process for applying for your DTC. And dementia absolutely was on there, and Alzheimer's was on there as well. So yes, you can apply for the TTC for someone who has dementia or Alzheimer's. I recommend it. What that spring economic update is sort of trying to address is that they're going to have a fast track process. So it's a little bit quicker of an application for people who have a formal diagnosis of dementia and Alzheimer's. But remember, you don't always need a formal diagnosis to apply. However, in this case, it's going to hopefully speed up that application process a little bit and make it a little bit easier for those folks who care for their family members with dementia and Alzheimer's to apply for the DTC. What this will look like yet, we don't really know. We have our own questions about the spring economic update that we're in the process of getting answered because it is so brand new. So I don't have exact concrete answers that I'm able to paint a picture of what it's going to look like exactly for that expedited or fast track process, but we're hoping that it will result in a bit of an easier time for caregivers and family members living with dementia and Alzheimer's to get their DTC.
Thank you. And what I would say is maybe safe to say, or maybe safe to share with folks, that these are retroactive benefits. So if you say wanted to wait to figure out when all the dust settles from these new changes and things, you can receive some of these benefits if you're eligible for them retroactively. And I believe, Selena, it's up to 10 years. Is that right?
Up to 10 years. So we're looking at about 2016 right now. Yes, you can go back up to 10 years. So if you've had your disability your whole life, as much as I would love to say, like, yeah, let's go back, 40 years, they do cap it at 10 years. But it is nice that we're still able to go a little bit retroactive for those 10 years.
Great. Thank you. Now we did have a question about the reapplication process. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna make my own question and make this a little bit of a two-parter.
sure.
One is, how does somebody know when they need to reapply? Like, how do they get that information that their DTC is only good for 5 years, 10 years, lifetime? When do they get a ping and notification when they need to reapply? And is there anything that folks can consider when they are applying to look at like the longevity of how long their DTC lasts for?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you are approved for your DTC, you'll get that through the notice of assessment. It should usually there have the amount of years that you're approved for attached. If you have any questions, you can call the phone number. Ebony will pop that in the chat for you. So if you're like, I remember getting that notice of assessment and I don't want to log into my CRA and dig through and I can't quite remember, you can call the CRA and ask, and they will be able to tell you. As far as like a notification that you need to reply, I would hope that would go through your My CRA online portal or that you would receive that in the mail. I've had reports of some people not receiving that. So just make sure to know when you get that notice of assessment, um, when your DTC expires. Some people like to put a calendar date for, okay, in 4 years on this day, I have to remember to start my reapplication process. Unfortunately, when you're applying, there's no real way to know. I know it feels really frustrating for folks because some folks do have a lifelong disability that will never change, yet they're only approved for 5 years. That's a decision that's made by the CRA. Unfortunately, we don't really have any insight to what the reasoning behind that is, but don't get discouraged. I do see sometimes that people are approved for 5 years at first and then they reapply and the CRA goes, okay, now actually this is maybe a lifetime situation. So then they approve the second time for a lifetime. And I have also seen people who just reapply every 5 years. They put that mark on their calendars to start the reapplication process and they're able to successfully reapply every time their DTC expires.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, if somebody were to apply and maybe they weren't accepted, didn't meet the eligibility criteria, they were found to not be, eligible for the DTC. Is there a time frame or a period of time that has to pass before they can try again? Or they can just continue to apply it as long as they would like to try?
Yes, yes. It's not like driver's licensing where they like if you fail it 3 times, they make you wait however many months. It's nothing like that. It's a just usually it's that the application has to be tweaked a little bit or the CRA just didn't quite understand. So in those cases, I really recommend actually reaching out to Plan Institute. We do a lot of reapplication support. Um, and we are happy to take a look at your application and go, okay, maybe the CRA didn't really understand here. You can add more information to your previous application and try again. A lot of people find it easier to just start fresh. That's what we do with a lot of people who come through our helpline and just start on a new application, especially with that support of an advisor who helps people with these applications all the time. It's really easier to see like, okay, this is the language that the CRA was looking for. This is maybe what I should have put in the first time and reapply. And if that one is denied as well, don't feel too discouraged. I know it can feel really invalidating to, get a notice of determination back that you don't qualify. But please know that's not the end of the road. we can always reapply, and we're cheering you on at Plain Institute. And if you need our help, we're here. And we're free, where we don't charge. So
And that is really helpful information for folks to know, especially if we can't get to some of your nuanced questions today. That helpline number and link that's in the chat right now is a really great place for folks to contact, reach out, and know that it's not going to cost you anything. And you can get free advice based on your unique situation and help and support for next steps. So that is absolutely wonderful. We did answer this question in the chat, but I do want to ask it again because we know a lot of folks in the province of Ontario are without family doctors. Unfortunately, healthcare system is working hard to catch up and support as many folks as possible, but lots of people don't have a family physician. And so can you just touch on, if you're one of those people that doesn't have a family doctor, where would somebody go to get sign off or support in completing some of these applications?
absolutely. That is another really frustrating aspect for folks that I have heard many reports of as well. Um, so there's a couple strategies. You can go to a walk-in clinic. Sometimes you get a really great walk-in doctor and they're happy to sign it for you and have that conversation with you. Sometimes they won't do it. It's a little bit of a luck of a draw thing there. There's also doctors online. There's like TELUS Health, or I think it used to be called Babylon Health, but now they call it TELUS Health, like a telehealth doctor. There's numerous amounts of companies that do those online doctors visits. They will sign it as well. And then if you have those marked restrictions in specific categories, you can go to those specialists. So say you have vision problems, you can have your optometrist sign off on that. Or if you're deaf or experience significant hearing loss, you can have an audiologist sign off on that. Maybe you have some speech issues, a speech language pathologist can sign off on that one. So it's really helpful to know that you're not just stuck going to your GP. You can always try a walk-in, you can try an online doctor, or you can look and see if the category that you experience an impairment in is one that a specialist for that category could sign off on.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. My next question is, sometimes caregivers are also people living with disabilities. So they have their
Mm.
own lifelong disability, but they're also providing care to a family member, friend, neighbor, somebody else. Um, when we talk about some of these benefits or the DTC, for example, are they able to apply for themselves while supporting somebody else, to like their care recipient, to apply for the DTC? And if they're their primary caregiver, how does all that work when, maybe that the person they're applying for doesn't have a job, but they are work, like, can the benefits transfer over? This is getting a little complicated, but I'm just wanting to put that out there because we do have a lot of caregivers that are living with a disability and caring for others.
Yeah, absolutely. People with disabilities are some of the most compassionate caregivers I've ever met. So it's a situation that happens a lot where you do have someone with a disability and they are giving care for someone else with a disability. I know the quick answer is yes, of course. You can, if you're experiencing impairments that impact your everyday daily living activities, you can apply for that DTC. Um, we sometimes have parents who have disabilities who also have children who have disabilities. So that can work that way as well. It's just it gets a little bit unique when we start looking at like family situations and like parents and children, and that is one that I would maybe need to know like the whole family situation on before I could get like an exact answer of what's going on. But I always say there's no harm in trying. Like there's no harm in trying and applying. So if you feel that your impairments are impacting your everyday activities of daily living, I encourage you to go ahead and apply for that DTC, no matter what your life looks like. Um, it's our life circumstances change too as well. We may spend a significant portion of our life caregiving for someone, and then maybe we don't. So don't let the way your life looks maybe influence how you feel about applying or not. It's always worth trying. It's always worth applying.
Mm. The next question is a bit more specific to provincial benefits, in Ontario. So I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this,
Can
but
give it a shot. Yeah.
if somebody say they're approved for the disability tax credit. So what we often see is sometimes people apply, they don't know about all these benefits. They don't know about all these credits. They're figuring things out as they go. Caregivers are masterful at just
Yeah.
rolling with it and figuring it out as we go. And so maybe they have somebody who needs to be on ODSP, for example. Can like establishing yourself in one avenue, so having a disability tax credit, can that establish like stronger parameters towards something like the our Ontario Disability Support Plan that we have in
ODSP.
Ontario?
Yeah. Unfortunately, like I would love it if it was just one application. That is my dream, that one day it's just one checkbox and you get your DTC or your ODSP and your PWD all in one package. That would be great. Unfortunately, the way it is right now, those are independent of each other. So I would say short answer, no. Having ODSP and then applying for the DTC or having the DTC and then applying ODSP doesn't really increase the odds or um, make one a guarantee if you have the other, which is unfortunate. I know that's a lot of applications to
Yeah.
go through, but they are applications that are independent of each other. However, maybe the experience that you have from applying to your DTC will just help inform the way you apply for your ODSP or PWD if you're in BC like I am. Um, the more experience you have with filling out these forms, sort of the easier they get sometimes. So while one doesn't guarantee the other, sometimes your own experience can come into play, and that can make it feel a little easier to fill out the other application, whether that's you have ODSP and you're applying for the DTC, or you have DTC and you're applying for ODSP.
Yeah, thank you. And certainly there have been lots of hot tips and strategies shared in the chat today as well. So folks, take what works for you and leave the rest. And again, Ebony's been doing amazing and sharing resources, but our other caregivers have been sharing their strategies and the ways that they
Oh, that
have
makes me so
found it to work
happy.
for them. Yeah, this is why we love our chat box, because sometimes
Yeah.
we get support from other caregivers, and it's really helpful for others who are new or just learning some of these pieces. So we only have a couple minutes left, and I know I have not asked all the questions, folks. I'm doing the best I can to get through and chunk some things. But I do have a question here from somebody around like if you're applying for these, say the disability tax credit, does the person you care for have to be in attendance at the appointment with the physician in order for this to like move forward?
I would say again, that's sort of a personal circumstance situation. Like I would say it's general best practice to bring them with you. I think for caregiving for someone, it's always best to involve them as much as we can in the decisions that are being made around their life and how that's looking, whether that's an application or not. However, if someone is really, really confined to their house, there may be other ways around that. Something that I see often is a telehealth appointment. So the doctor, even if it's your regular GP, is able to do an appointment online and have this conversation with you, and then you can have the person you're caregiving for in the room or in the location that you're calling from. Um, so I, again, de depends on circumstance for that one, but I would say it's generally best practice to have them with you if you can make that work. And hopefully you have accommodating and accessibility knowledgeable doctor who will be able to support you
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's great. And we know that sometimes there's limiting factors to having people attend
Yeah.
appointments, but certainly where possible, we also encourage, that care recipient to be a part of the conversation where it makes sense. So that's great.
Yeah, I
Um,
know sometimes there may be a case where it's like a child and they're not going to stay in the room. Like it's okay in those
yeah,
cases to, of course, like have these conversations while they're not in the room or they're in and out. But generally it's nice to be able to include the person. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, I'm going to ask one last question. I'm going to squeeze it in before we wrap up, folks. And
sure.
this is about RDSP.
hmm
If I can find it in my list here. What is the maximum amount that you can put into an RDSP?
So you can do up to $200,000 and you can get that $90,000 in. So the maximum contribution from the government is $90,000, but that's over time, like as they match your grants and funds that are contributed, they don't just put it all in there at once. And then I believe I can double check these numbers, of course, and we can send it in the email after because there's lots of numbers floating around in my head at all times. But I believe the maximum is $200,000. Maybe Ebony can pop it in the chat as well that you can contribute to your RDSP. But the growth in the RDSP is unlimited. So if you have $200,000 in there and it's invested and it grows to 2 million, amazing. Like that is unlimited, which is a really great part of the RDSP.
Right. And yes, Ebony has confirmed you are right. It is
Oh,
200,000.
200,000.
So
Great.
you can, as an individual, can contribute up to that amount. Then there's the grants and bonds piece. And then because it's a savings plan, there's additional growth opportunities there over time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. We're going to stop there. It's right at 1 o'clock. I want to thank you, Solana, so very much for your presentation and all of this wonderful information, answering as many questions as we could fit in. And thank you to Ebony, who's behind the scenes, for all of her expertise in the chat box. This has been such a wonderful webinar. We're so grateful that Plan Institute could join us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. All of us at Plan Institute are what we like to call disability benefits nerds. So it truly brings us great joy to help people learn about these disability benefits. And we're always happy to continue a conversation with you. So feel free to reach out to our helpline at any time. Thank you so much for having me today.